Before an operator can do productive keying, he has to be able to navigate a work file. Let's go into data entry again. Double-click on the icon, log in as student, and this time let's use correct a file. When Unibase asks us to give the file name, use our zip code file in the student subdirectory. Notice that our mode is C for correct. I'm going to show you how to move around the data in this file, a character at a time, a field at a time, and a record at a time. As you might expect, the cursor forward, right arrow key, moves you forward a character at a time. When you reach the end of the field, Unibase jumps to the first character in the next field. When you press the cursor back key, the left arrow, you move back a character at a time, including backing up to the last character in a prior field. When you reach the end of a record, takes a second or two, Unibase jumps to the first character in the first field in the next record. If I try to cursor back, the cursor doesn't back up to the prior record. Okay, we know a little bit about moving forward with the cursor keys. That's nice, but what if I want to move around a bit faster? An operator can go forward and backward by field and forward and backward by record. And as with much of today's software, there's more than one way to do this. Pressing the field release key, which is the enter key, moves you to the first position of the next field. Just as its name implies, you field release from the current field to the next field. The release key, function key 10, releases you to the next record. Every time I press it, you can see the record counter bumping by 1. Unibase codes function key 3 as the record key and function key 4 as the field key. If I press function key 3, release it, and press the left cursor key, I back up a record. Let's watch the record counter, and I'll do this a couple more times. Function key 3, left arrow. Function key 3, left arrow. Notice that we keep backing up to the first character of the first field. If we're not at the first field or the first character, then pressing function key 3 and doing a left cursor key takes us merely to the beginning of the same record. We don't back up to the prior record unless we're at the first character in the first field of the record. If you're not at the first field of a record and just want to back up a single field, press function key 4, that's the field key, release it, and again press the left cursor key, and we back up to the beginning of the prior field. This is probably more useful than backing up to the last character of the prior field, depending upon what you're doing. Of course, the field and record keys also work with the right arrow key. The combinations move you forward a record at a time. Function key 3, right arrow. See the record counter moving? Function key 3, right arrow. Or, let's now look at the field counter. Function key 4, right arrow, and we're in field 2. Function key 4, right arrow, we're in field 3. If we do it again, the record counter jumped, and we're in field 1 of record 9. Unibase also has a second 2-key combination for moving forward and back a record or a field at a time. In this case, you press the Shift key and hold it. Then each cursor movement key performs a different movement inside Unibase. Shift right arrow moves you forward a field. I'm holding the Shift key down and pressing the right arrow. We're moving a field at a time, and every time we get to the third field, the next movement takes us to the beginning of the next record. The Shift left arrow moves you back a field. but notice that it won't back up a record. The Shift up arrow moves you back a record. And of course, the Shift down arrow moves you forward a record. Sounds like we've covered everything, but not quite. All these movements may be done in all the ways I've described in Correct a File and Examine a File. Entry mode and Verify mode have minor differences. Let's go see what they are. Let's resume the student zip code file. Notice that we now have an R for resume, and we're at record number 4931. Resume is expecting us to key information onto the end of the file. If I push the cursor right key, I get an end of data message. If I push the Shift key and hold the cursor right key, I get the same message. If I hold the Shift key and do the down arrow key, I get the same message. But I can do a record back, and if I'm not at the beginning of a record, I can also do a field back. Once you've backed up in the file, you can again use all these operations. Holding the Shift key, pressing the right arrow moves me forward. Pressing the down arrow moves me forward a record. And again, I'm at the end of data, record 4930. The message you get in all these cases is end of data. It means you're trying to get past fields or records for which no data has been entered. There's no way Unibase can do that. But look, pressing the field release key or the release key does move us forward. Watch the record counter. The difference is that these two keys will fill the field or record with blanks, and a blank character is a legitimate piece of data. The record number increased when I pressed release. If I do a record back, function key 3, left arrow, I have a record with no useful information in it, but the record does have data. So if you can't seem to do something you know you did before, check what mode you're in. It makes a difference. Although we won't cover them now, there are environment variables that can limit these motions if your operators are used to something else. Also, there are keys your operator could use to change the performance of some of the functions, the easiest example being the auto function key, which we'll discuss in the next lesson. So let's exit data entry and go back to the desktop.